The sky wept the morning Alexander Whitmore was buried. Rain fell in steady sheets, blurring the black umbrellas and designer coats that filled the hillside cemetery. Cameras flashed through the mist, capturing every calculated tear, every hollow speech about legacy and greatness. The billionaire's empire stretched across continents, tech, real estate, luxury brands. And now even his death had become a performance. Reporters murmured under tents. Investors huddled in quiet corners, whispering about stock projections, not sorrow. And at the front, clutching a single white rose, stood Vanessa Price, Alexander's glamorous fiancée, wrapped in a coat worth more than most people's cars. Her makeup didn't smudge, her composure didn't break. She looked every bit the grieving widow, except she wasn't one. Because 20 feet away, hidden beneath the shade of an oak tree, another woman stood watching, silent, still, and very much real. Her name was Riley Jameson, Alexander Whitmore's true wife. No one knew she existed. Not the reporters, not the board, not even Vanessa. To them, Riley was invisible, a name erased from his world long before his death. But to her, every word spoken at that funeral felt like salt against an open wound. She didn't come to mourn. She came to remember what was stolen and to hear the lies they would tell. The rain clung to her coat as she watched Vanessa accept condolences she had no right to. The words "love of his life" echoed through the air, hollow and rehearsed. Riley bit the inside of her cheek until she tasted blood. Once those same words had belonged to her. Once Alexander had promised they would always face the world together. Now the world didn't even know she existed. When the last camera shutter closed and the crowd began to thin, Riley turned to leave. But a man in a dark suit approached her. Not a mourner, not a reporter. His expression was blank, professional. Without a word, he handed her a sealed black envelope and disappeared into the rain. Her fingers trembled as she opened it. Inside was a handwritten letter and a small, old-fashioned key. The letter was short, only one sentence. If you're reading this, they've already started lying. Alexander. She turned the envelope over. No postmark, no label, just a faint embossed seal she recognized. The Whitmore Family Trust. Alexander had told her once, half joking, "If I ever go dark for 48 hours, my lawyer has standing orders. Dead man switch. You'll get a package. No questions asked." She hadn't thought he was serious. Until now. Her breath caught. The letter wasn't dated, but the ink was fresh. Written within the last 48 hours, triggered by his silence. The world around her blurred, the wind slicing through her composure. The letter wasn't dated, but the ink was fresh. Not months old, not years. Whatever this meant, Alexander had written it not long before his death. The key glinted under the gray sky, heavy with meaning. It wasn't one she recognized. Ornate, metallic, carved with the initials AW. And in that moment, Riley realized something she had tried to bury for months. Alexander hadn't just left her behind. He'd left her a message. That night, she sat alone in her small apartment. The one no one knew existed, tucked away from the glass towers and flashing lights of his world. She placed the key and letter on the table beside a framed photo. Her and Alexander years ago, smiling in front of a cabin near the coast. Back when their love was simple, secret, and safe. She remembered the way he used to trace her wedding band with his thumb whenever he couldn't sleep. The way he'd whisper, "Just a little longer. When the time's right, the world will know." But time ran out. The day he told her they needed to stay hidden, she didn't ask why. She trusted him, the man who made her believe in forever. She didn't question why their marriage certificate was never filed publicly or why their home existed under another name. She told herself it was protection, that being invisible was temporary. Now she wasn't so sure. Riley pulled up the newsfeed. Every outlet glowed with Vanessa's photo beside Alexander's. Tragic loss. Tech visionary leaves, fortune to fiancé. Her stomach turned. There was no mention of her, no trace of the years she gave him, no evidence of their life together, except for the letter and the key. She turned them over again, her mind racing. The handwriting was unmistakable, bold and deliberate, just like him. And the key, It wasn't for any of their shared properties. Not the apartment in the city, not the cabin by the sea. This was something else, something he'd never told her about. Her pulse quickened. Whatever secret Alexander had been keeping, it hadn't died with him. The clock ticked past midnight. Rain tapped softly against the window, a haunting rhythm that filled the silence. Riley stared at her reflection in the glass. Tired eyes, pale skin, the weight of grief and betrayal sitting heavy on her shoulders. She whispered to herself, almost like a vow, "They've already started lying, haven't they?" The next morning, she visited Alexander's grave again. This time, no cameras, no guests, just her and the cold marble etched with his name. She placed the letter on the stone, tracing the carved letters with trembling fingers. "I don't know what you did," she murmured, voice breaking, "but I'll find out." Behind her, two men in black suits stood by the cemetery gate, pretending to check their phones. Their eyes followed her closely, too closely. Riley's instincts flared. She slipped the key into her pocket and turned away, walking calmly down the path. She didn't know who those men worked for. The company? Vanessa? Someone else? But she knew one thing for certain. Whatever Alexander had left behind, someone didn't want her to find it. As she reached her car, thunder cracked in the distance, a warning from the sky itself. She glanced back at the grave, her heart pounding with a mix of grief and determination. The world thought Alexander Whitmore's story ended at that funeral, but for Riley Jameson, it had only just begun. Before we continue, take a second to hit that subscribe button. It truly helps us keep creating these cinematic stories. Believe it or not, each one takes hours of writing, editing, and voice work to bring to life. Your support keeps this channel going. The rain hadn't stopped in 2 days. It poured like the sky itself was trying to wash away secrets that refused to stay buried. Riley drove through the city with the envelope and key on the passenger seat, her hands gripping the wheel so tightly her knuckles whitened. Every red light reflected off the windshield like a warning. Every shadow on the sidewalk felt like eyes. She had one destination, the old warehouse district on the river's edge. That key wasn't to any home she knew, but something about its weight, its design. The engraved AW led her to the place where Alexander once said, "Some things are safer kept off the books." Back then, she thought he meant assets. Now she wasn't so sure. The building was unmarked, a tall, gray structure that looked abandoned from the outside. The security cameras above the entrance were dead. The keypad was dusty, untouched for years. But when Riley slid the key into the hidden lock beneath the metal panel, it clicked instantly. The door opened. Inside was darkness, thick, stale, silent. Her phone light cut through it, revealing a narrow corridor lined with metal doors. One at the end stood slightly ajar. She hesitated, her heartbeat echoing in her ears. Then she stepped inside. The room smelled faintly of paper and oil. On the far wall hung a single photograph. Alexander, younger, standing beside a man she didn't recognize. A small brass plaque beneath it read, "Whitmore Research Initiative, Confidential Archives." Stacks of folders covered a desk. Blueprints, offshore records, transaction slips under shell company names she'd never seen. Riley's chest tightened. These weren't business documents. They were evidence of what she didn't yet know. She reached for one labeled Everline Technologies, acquisition phase. Inside were purchase records, and beneath them, bank transfers marked with initials she recognized all too well. VP Vanessa Price. Riley froze. Vanessa, the glamorous fiancée paraded at the funeral, had been secretly paid by Alexander's holding company months before his death. Not in small sums, millions. Her stomach turned. Vanessa wasn't just a replacement, she was a setup. Riley flipped through the pages faster, her trembling fingers brushing over a smaller folder hidden at the bottom. Its tab read simply, RJ, her initials. She opened it. Inside was a marriage certificate, hers and Alexander's, but it was stamped void in red ink. Attached was a court document she'd never seen before, filed quietly 6 months earlier. It claimed Riley Jameson had voluntarily renounced marital claim due to mental unfitness. Her breath caught. "What?" she whispered, her throat tight. It wasn't just false. It was calculated. Someone had erased her legally. Her phone buzzed suddenly, slicing through the silence. Unknown number. She answered, her voice trembling. Hello? Nothing but static, then a single word, distorted and low. Stop. The line went dead. Her heart pounded as she backed away from the desk, realizing she wasn't alone in this. Someone knew she'd opened the lock. Someone was watching. She grabbed as many documents as she could, shoved them into her bag, and ran. Outside, the wind howled through the alley, carrying the metallic tang of danger. Her car sat where she left it, but she didn't get in right away. She scanned the shadows. Then she saw it. A black SUV parked half a block down, headlights off, engine running. Her instincts screamed. She climbed in, started the car, and sped off into the rain. Hours later, safe inside her apartment, Riley spread the documents across the kitchen table. The city outside glowed faintly through the window. A cold reminder that the world thought Alexander's story had ended neatly. It hadn't. Piece by piece, the truth began to emerge. Alexander had been investigating his own company in the months before his death. Massive funds were missing. His name was being used in illegal acquisitions, and all trails led back to his inner circle. Vanessa wasn't just a pawn, she was part of it, and someone wanted Riley out of the picture before she found out. But why fake her mental incompetence? Why void her marriage? Why erase her completely? Unless Alexander had discovered something so dangerous that keeping Riley invisible was the only way to protect her. She stared at the photo on her table, the man beside Alexander in that archive picture. Tall, sharp-featured, cold eyes. A faint memory tugged at her. She'd seen that face before, at the funeral, standing behind Vanessa, silent and watching. A chill ran through her. This wasn't over. Riley's phone buzzed again, this time an email notification. No sender, just a subject line. You're not safe. Trust no one. Her breath caught. Alexander. Impossible. He was gone. Or was this someone else continuing what he started? Attached was a single file, a short video clip. It opened with static, then flickered to an image of Alexander sitting at his desk. His voice was tired but steady. If you're seeing this, it means they've gotten to me. And if they know you're still alive, Riley, they'll come for you too. Riley's eyes filled with tears as he continued. I tried to fight them. I tried to keep you safe by erasing your name. It was the only way to protect you. The truth is buried in Project Halcyon. It's not about business. It's about people. Lives ruined for profit. Vanessa was never who she claimed to be. Find the file, expose them, and whatever happens, don't trust anyone from the board. The video cut off. Riley sat frozen, staring at the screen, her heart splintering under the weight of it all. He hadn't betrayed her. He had sacrificed everything to protect her. Tears fell silently as she replayed his words, committing them to memory. Project Halcyon. That was the key. The reason behind everything. His death, her erasure, the danger that followed, her grief turned to steel. They thought she'd stay quiet, the forgotten wife, erased from his story. But they'd underestimated the one thing Alexander always admired about her. She never ran from the truth. She turned off the lights, packed the files into a waterproof case, and slipped the keychain around her wrist. Whatever Project Halcyon was, she was going to find it. And when she did, the world would finally know who Riley Jameson really was. If you found out your late husband had erased your existence to protect you, would you forgive him or demand the full truth, no matter the cost? The morning sun broke through the blinds, slicing across Riley's face. But there was no warmth in it. She hadn't slept. The papers from Alexander's archive lay scattered across her living room floor like the remains of a war she was now part of. On her laptop screen, the paused video of Alexander stared back at her, his tired eyes frozen mid-frame. The man she had mourned, the husband she thought had betrayed her, was still protecting her from beyond the grave. She whispered under her breath, Project Halcyon. Even the name felt dangerous. She searched everything. Public databases, court records, Private listings. Nothing. It didn't exist, which meant it was hidden deliberately. Buried deep. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. We need to talk. Noon. Grandview Cemetery. Come alone, Riley hesitated. The last time she followed an anonymous lead, she ended up nearly run off the road. But something in her gut, the same instinct that made her dig into Alexander's past, told her this wasn't random. She went. The cemetery was quiet, the grass still wet from last night's rain. Gray clouds drifted low as she made her way through the marble headstones, her footsteps soft against the earth. Then she saw him. A man stood near Alexander's grave, tall with a dark coat and an expression carved from grief and guilt. He looked up as she approached. Sharp eyes, tired smile. Riley Jameson, he said softly. You really shouldn't be here. She froze. You know me. He nodded. Name's Michael Lane. I worked with your husband, or rather for him. Until things went bad, her pulse quickened. You're part of this project Halcyon, aren't you? He looked around nervously. Not part of it. I was trying to stop it. Alexander and I both were. Riley stepped closer. Then tell me what it is. Michael sighed, glancing toward the gate before speaking. Halcyon wasn't just a project. It was a human trial, a medical tech experiment hidden under Whitmore research. On paper, it was about neural recovery. But in reality, they were testing cognitive enhancement drugs on injured veterans without consent. Riley's stomach dropped. That's impossible. Not when you own the hospitals, he said bitterly. They erased data, silenced whistleblowers, paid off families. Alexander found out. He was gathering evidence to expose them. That's why they turned on him. She struggled to breathe. So his death wasn't an accident, Michael finished. He knew they'd come for him. He planned to send you everything. He just didn't make it in time. Riley's legs felt weak. The truth was worse than she imagined. Corruption, murder, cover-ups, and her husband had died trying to stop it. Michael handed her a small flash drive. Everything I managed to get out before they shut us down. Names, payments, trial data. But if you're going to open it, don't do it on any network they control. Who's they? The board. And the woman running the foundation now, Vanessa Price. The name burned like acid. The woman who smiled at Alexander's funeral, pretending to grieve, had been the one pulling the strings all along. Riley clenched her jaw. Then it's time someone made her face the truth. Michael shook his head. Be careful. She doesn't just destroy reputations. She erases people, like she tried to erase you. Before Riley could respond, a black SUV pulled up at the far end of the cemetery. Michael's eyes widened. They found me. Who? Go! He hissed, thrusting the drive into her hand. Don't stop until this is out. He turned toward the approaching men, buying her time. Riley hesitated only a second before sprinting toward the side gate. She heard shouting, then a gunshot. The sound echoed through the cemetery like thunder. She didn't look back. By evening, Riley was on the move. Her bag packed, the flash drive hidden inside a hollowed-out book. She couldn't go home. She couldn't trust anyone. She checked into a cheap roadside motel under a fake name. Her hands trembled as she plugged the drive into her laptop. The files opened instantly. Hundreds of encrypted documents, patient reports, video testimonies. One folder was marked Confidential V Price. Inside, payment records linked Vanessa directly to Whitmore Research, laundering millions through the Everton Foundation, the same charity she'd used to polish her public image. But one video stopped Riley cold. It was time-stamped 2 days before Alexander's crash. Alexander sat at his desk, voice low, face strained. If anything happens to me, Vanessa Price and her board are responsible. They're killing people for profit, and they're using charity money to fund it. He paused, eyes hardening. If they come for you, Riley, run. But don't stay gone forever. When it's safe, finish what I started. The screen flickered, then went black. Tears burned her eyes, but she didn't have time to fall apart. She copied the files, uploaded them to a secure drive, and drafted an anonymous press drop. But before she could hit send, her laptop froze. A warning popped up on the screen. Access detected. Trace initiated. Her heart stopped. They'd found her. She yanked the power cord, shoved the laptop into her bag, and ran. Outside, a car engine roared to life, headlights blinding her as she burst from the motel door. Tires screeched as she dove behind a dumpster. The car sped past, missing her by inches, before disappearing into the rain. She waited until her breathing slowed, then slipped into the shadows and kept walking. No destination, just away. By dawn, she found refuge in an old cafe near the train station. She sat in a corner booth, sipping cold coffee, replaying everything in her head. Alexander had risked everything to stop them. Michael had died for trying, and she was next on their list. Unless she did the one thing they didn't expect. Fight back. She opened her phone and began typing a message to a journalist she remembered. Someone who'd once covered corporate corruption and refused to be silenced. Subject line, the truth about the Whitmore Foundation. Attached, copies of every file, video, and record she had left. When she hit send, her hands stopped shaking. Because for the first time since Alexander's death, she wasn't afraid. She looked out at the rising sun, streaks of gold cutting through the morning haze, and whispered, "I'll finish it, Alex. I swear." 3 days passed. 3 days of silence, waiting and watching, until the world finally woke up. It started as a whisper on social media, a leaked file, a mysterious email sent to dozens of journalists, government officials, and human rights lawyers. Subject, the Whitmore Files. Project Halcyon. By sunrise, the news had broken wide open. Exposé, billion-dollar foundation accused of illegal human trials. Anonymous source leaks evidence tied to late CEO Alexander Whitmore. The internet exploded. Hashtags trended worldwide. And at the heart of it all, Vanessa Price. For years, she'd built her empire on philanthropy and public sympathy, smiling through interviews, donating millions to hospitals she secretly exploited. Now, every secret she buried clawed its way to the surface. Inside her penthouse office, Vanessa stared at the screen in disbelief. "Who did this?" she hissed, slamming her phone onto the glass desk. Her assistant's voice trembled. "The files, they were authenticated. And the servers trace back to your foundation." Vanessa's face drained of color. Impossible, but it wasn't. Because the files didn't come from her enemies. They came from the man she thought she'd buried, through the woman she never expected to fight back. Miles away, Riley sat quietly in a cafe corner, eyes fixed on the news feed, as the anchors replayed Alexander's video statement on loop. His words echoed through every major network. "If this reaches you, it means they silenced me." But the truth doesn't die with the person who speaks it. It only waits for someone brave enough to keep it alive. The world was listening now, and Riley, the wife no one knew existed, had become his voice. But this wasn't just about exposure. It was about closure. She had one last thing to do: deliver the evidence in person. That evening, under a sky bruised by rain clouds, Riley walked into the Everton Foundation's annual memorial gala, the same glittering hall that once celebrated Alexander's success and masked his enemy's deceit. She wore black, not as mourning, but as armor. The crowd murmured, recognizing her from the viral coverage. The secret wife, the woman behind the leaks. Vanessa stood at the podium, perfectly composed, pretending nothing had happened. Her speech flowed with empty words. Philanthropy, trust, healing, the same lies she'd built her empire upon, until Riley stepped forward. Every head turned. Cameras pivoted. A hush swept through the room. Riley's voice was calm, steady, the kind that silences noise without shouting. "You talk about trust," she said, "but you built this foundation on deceit. You called yourself a savior while destroying the people you claimed to help. And when someone tried to stop you, you killed him." Gasps rippled across the hall. Vanessa froze mid-sentence. Security hesitated, unsure what to do as Riley reached into her bag and held up a small drive. "This," she said, "is every document, every payment, every life you used to fund your power. And as of 5 minutes ago, it's been sent to the global press and law enforcement. On the massive LED screen behind them, the Foundation's logo flickered, then changed. Video footage began to play. Hidden recordings, financial documents, board meeting transcripts, proof of every crime Vanessa thought she'd buried. The crowd erupted, reporters shouting, cameras flashing, executives scrambling for exits. Vanessa's mask cracked. "You think this makes you a hero?" she snapped, voice shaking. Riley met her eyes. "No, it makes me free." Vanessa lunged forward, but before security could reach Riley, federal agents entered the hall. "Vanessa Price, you're under arrest for fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy." The crowd parted. Flashbulbs exploded, and for the first time, Riley didn't flinch from the light. The next morning, the world changed. Headlines blazed with truth. Vanessa Price arrested in billion-dollar scandal. Late CEO's wife brings down corrupt empire. TV anchors called it the most poetic justice of the decade. But Riley didn't care about the praise. She stood on a quiet hill overlooking the city, the place she used to visit with Alexander. The wind carried faint echoes of the chaos below, but up here, there was peace. She placed a single white rose on the grass beside his old watch. "You kept your promise," she whispered. "Now I've kept mine." The clouds parted slightly, a sliver of light breaking through, golden and soft. She smiled, tears glinting. "We did it, Alex." Weeks later, the world still talked about her, the hidden wife who changed everything. But Riley didn't chase fame. Instead, she quietly launched the Whitmore Integrity Foundation, dedicated to protecting whistleblowers and victims of corporate corruption. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about rebuilding, turning pain into power. One evening during an interview, a reporter asked her, "Do you ever regret going public? Risking everything?" Riley's smile was faint but sure. "Regret? Number. Because the truth may destroy empires, but it saves souls, and that's worth more than silence." As the camera lights faded, Riley looked out the window, the city lights reflecting in her eyes. For the first time since Alexander's death, she felt peace, not because she'd won, but because she'd finally understood him. The man everyone thought was untouchable had simply wanted to make the world a little less cruel. And now through her, he had. Would you have exposed the truth like Riley did, even if it meant risking your life? Or would you have walked away to start over? The world moved on, as it always does. But the echoes of the truth Riley unleashed didn't fade. Months passed. The trial of Vanessa Price became a global spectacle. The once glamorous CEO arrived in court handcuffed, her designer smile replaced with defiance and disbelief. The verdict was inevitable. Guilty on all counts. When the sentence was read, Riley didn't celebrate. She simply closed her eyes and whispered, "It's over." But deep down, she knew it wasn't. Justice might close a chapter, but it never erases the scars left by the story. After the storm, silence. Riley retreated from the public eye. She moved into a modest home on the outskirts of the city, near the ocean, where the horizon stretched endlessly. It was the same view she and Alexander once dreamed of having when everything was done, when the world finally stopped demanding pieces of them. She spent her mornings walking along the shore, barefoot on cool sand, letting the waves wash away the remnants of fear and guilt. Some days she talked to him, quietly like he was still there. "You'd laugh if you saw the headlines now," she'd say with a soft smile. "They call me the billionaire's widow who saved the world. You'd hate that." The seagulls answered in place of his voice, and somehow that was enough. In time, she rebuilt her life with purpose. The Whitmore Integrity Foundation grew faster than anyone predicted. Whistleblowers, survivors, and investigators all finding a home under her leadership. Every person she helped reminded her of Alexander's promise. Use the truth like a weapon, not to wound, but to wake. And that's exactly what she did. Under Riley's watch, the foundation uncovered more corruption cases, not just in the corporate world, but in politics, medicine, and even charities that preyed on suffering. Each exposure wasn't vengeance. It was healing, one truth at a time. And though she never said it aloud, she knew she wasn't doing it for Alexander anymore. She was doing it because of him. One quiet evening, as she sat by the ocean with her laptop, she received an email from an unknown sender. The subject line read, "Something he wanted you to have." Attached was a single video file. Her hands trembled as she clicked play. The screen flickered, and there he was, Alexander, alive again for just a moment, smiling, tired, and heartbreakingly human. "Riley," he said softly, "if you're watching this, it means I didn't make it out. I wanted to tell you this in person, but I never learned how to say goodbye." He paused, glancing down like he was gathering courage. "You always believed I could be more than the man the world saw. You were right. You were always right. And if they ever come for you, don't run. Don't hide. Show them who you are. You were the best part of my story. And now, you're the author of the rest." The video ended. Riley sat still, tears streaming silently. The waves crashed gently against the shore, as if echoing his voice, fading but eternal. She whispered, "I'm still here, Alex." Still writing? Years later, the world remembered the scandal not for its fall, but for what rose from it. The Whitmore Foundation had become an international force for integrity and transparency. Documentaries, laws, and movements bore Riley's fingerprints, though she never asked for credit. At every award ceremony or press event, she always said the same thing. Truth isn't revenge, it's redemption for those who dare to face it. And somewhere deep inside, she felt Alexander's presence every time she spoke those words. Because the truth she carried wasn't just his legacy, it was their love, reborn through justice. The camera fades in on a coastal sunrise. The ocean glows gold, soft waves brushing against the shore. Riley stands alone, wind in her hair, the faint smile of peace on her lips. She looks down at a small plaque resting on a rock near the water's edge, engraved with the words, "Alexander Whitmore, the man who believed truth could change the world, and the woman who proved him right." Riley traces her fingers over the inscription and whispers, "You were right, my love. The truth didn't die with you. It lived through me." She steps back, looking out at the endless horizon. They called her a secret, a mystery, a forgotten wife. But in the end, she became something far greater. The voice of the silence, the light behind the fall of giants. She didn't seek fame or fortune, only justice. And in choosing truth over comfort, she didn't just rewrite his story, she rewrote her own. The camera pulls away slowly, the ocean stretching endlessly below her. The wind carries a final whisper, almost like his voice saying, "I'm proud of you." Because sometimes the greatest love stories aren't written in romance. They're written in resilience. And sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't destruction, it's truth. If this story moved you, reminded you that truth and love always find their way, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs hope tonight. Every view, every comment, every click helps us keep telling stories that prove one thing, that no matter how dark it gets, light always finds a way through.